Welcome into Candlestick Chronicles, a 49ers podcast on the Blue Wire Podcast Network. I am Kyle Madson. I write about the 49ers over at NinersWire.com, part of the USA Today sports media group. Joining me right now, Chris Biderman, and we are going to discuss whatever the heck happened to the 49ers at Levi Stadium on Christmas. That was weird. But before we do that, we got to talk about our sponsors, and you know them, you love them, the official clothing brand of Candlestick Chronicles, Lamb Chops. SGLambchops.com is the website. That's SGLambchops.com. Promo code Candlestick20 at that website gets you 20% off your order. You can also follow them on Instagram at SGLambchops. Chris, you and I both connoisseurs of fine lamb chops clothing, whether it's a hoodie or shorts. It's got zippered pockets or no zippered pockets. If it's the joggers, whatever it is, you and I are into it. I'd like to welcome my dad to the Lamb Chops family. My mom, for Christmas, got my dad some Lamb Chops shorts, got him some Lamb Chops sweatpants. So, Dad, welcome to the Lamb Chops family. He is.
What does he think? Is he part of the Lamb Chops demographic?
Yeah, everybody is.
Okay,
it's for the whole family.
I can just imagine, because
he's fired up. The sweatpants are so, like, they're heavy. They are not, you can wear them and you will be legitimate. They're not those thin, cheap sweatpants that you put on and it's like, okay, I'm wearing pants, but like how effective are these really? They are like heavy duty, nice sweatpants, bro.
Yeah, no, they're super comfortable. I was just, like if I bought my dad something stylish like Lamb Chops, I think he might look at me a little sideways like this. I'm used to just those normal generic Target brand sweatpants, not something that looks this good, that's this functional with the zippered pockets. Right. So just curious to hear about your dad's reaction.
No, he's fired up. He's excited to be part of the team for sure.
Bryce in the YouTube chat, and we're streaming on YouTube. Says he needs Lamb Chops to take over like Lululemon, to be honest. Couldn't agree more.
I think totally there.
I think we could be on our way. We'll see.
That's our goal. That's literally our goal.
Could not agree more. Comfortable clothes, warm clothes, great for wintertime. Shout out to our guys at Lamb Chops.
The only way we get there is if everybody listening to this goes to sglambchops.com and uses that promo code Candlestick20. Get 20% off your order. Get yourself a hoodie, t-shirt, shorts, joggers, whatever you want, sweatpants. They got the new Letterman style jacket with the leather sleeves. It's sick as hell. Everything at sglambchops.com is dope. And that's the most important thing. Go to sglambchops.com today. Use promo code Candlestick20 to get 20% off your order and join the herd. We're also sponsored by Cooperage Brewing. I had a Cooperage beer last night at Christmas.
It's a sick brag.
Yeah, it was a Candlestick Chronicles Hazy IPA.
A really sick brag.
Yeah, thanks. It's my favorite part of the holiday. It's like everything gets done. I'm like, great. I'm going to drink beer with reckless abandon now.
As one should on a holiday. That's not why we didn't record. We didn't record because the 49ers lost. It was just Christmas, and we were not going to go. We were not going to go live after. We're not going to go live on Christmas Day, just out of respect for our producer Tyler and everyone else. It was just, we thought we'd take the night and sleep on it, reflect a little bit.
And I already had to sit away from my family during the game while I was writing and doing stuff. So it's like, I'm not going to then go upstairs for an hour and just totally disappear. I love the idea that we were going to podcast until the Niners lost, and then we are just like, nah, never mind.
I just wanted that to be clear. I tweeted it out from the Candy Cron account on X, formerly Twitter, and just let the people know that this was not happening as a result of the game. This was planned to not record.
You can visit Cooperage Brewing in Santa Rosa. It is a terrific brewery to hang out at. Take the whole family. They won't serve beer to the whole family like if you have little ones, but they can definitely hang out there. Bring a dog. Indoor seating, outdoor seating. Always a really good food truck. And great vibes and good beer. And if you find a beer you like, or maybe you can't make the trip up to Santa Rosa, you can go to CooperageBrewing.com, order yourself a case of beer. They'll deliver it right to your front door. You sign for it. You bring it inside. You drink the beer. It's the very best thing. Not having to leave your house to get 24 cans just dropped on your front doorstep is pretty dope. So go to CooperageBrewing.com and order your very good beer today.
If you're a pale ale person, if you're an IPA person, if you're a hazy person, if you're a wheat beer person, if you're a lager person, if you're a pilsner person, they have everything. If you're a beer person, it's obviously right up your
Hey,
alley. So shout out to Cooperage for having a little bit of everything and all of it being good.
Cooperage Brewing, the brewery for beer people. All right.
We should see it. We should see if they'll try that tagline.
Throw it on just the Candlestick Chronicles cans if you want. The brewery for beer people. Cooperage Brew, the unofficial tagline. All right, let's coopersbrewing.com, by the way, is a website where you can order your case of beer today. Let's dive into the 49ers. 33-19 loss to the Baltimore Ravens. So there needs to be something set up top here, because there's two separate discussions, I think, that come out of a game like this, where you have the number one seed in the AFC, the number one seed in the NFC, and the number one seed in the NFC came into the game as the more dominant team, and the number one team in the AFC came in and left the game as a more dominant team. The 49ers got smoked on Christmas night. There's no, two ways about it. There's no sugarcoating it. There's no, oh, it was a fluky, and if this play and that play, no, man, they got waxed at home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not like that. But at the same time, and then I'll let you go, at the same time, the season's not over. We didn't learn that the 49ers are actually bad now. They had a bad game. They got their asses kicked by a good team, and now they move forward. They can still very much win the Super Bowl.
Right. The silver lining of this game is obviously better to happen now in December than a playoff game. Right. And I don't know that there are necessarily lessons here to be learned from this game, because I mean, honestly, the analysis of the game is pretty straightforward. Don't turn the ball over 5 times. Don't give a really good team really good field position. Don't commit as many penalties as the 49ers had. It's not a complicated analysis. I don't think Brock Purdy's all of a sudden bad. I think he had a bad game. I think the Ravens played an outstanding game, particularly defensively, and offensively they were good enough to take advantage of the 49ers mistakes. I think there's a lot of talk about Brock Purdy's MVP candidacy. I think we could probably put that to bed. Brock Purdy needed to play like he did in the Eagles game or the Cowboys game earlier in the season for him to sort of cement the MVP standing. You can't throw 4 picks in a game like that against a really good team while there's another MVP candidate on the other side of the field playing as well as Lamar Jackson did last night. But that aside, Brock Purdy, the thing is and this is probably a broader conversation, but the first thing that popped in my head was is the Niners system bad now? Do we only call Brock Purdy a system quarterback when he's playing well? And right. To me, last night, what underscored to me, how well Brock Purdy was playing throughout the rest of the season, right? You have to play at a high level against good teams to produce in the way that Brock Purdy was producing. It wasn't just a product of the system, because it wasn't like the system was all of a sudden bad last night. It was Brock Purdy's actually playing poorly, and there's a drastic difference between playing poorly and playing at a really high level. Right. Which is what we saw leading up to last night in all the games, basically, except the Cleveland game and maybe the Cincinnati game, where you could make a similar case as to last night, where he just threw a bunch of picks. Right. But I don't know, man. The first interception, he's late in the red zone. You obviously cannot have that. Kyle Hamilton comes over and picks off that pass over the middle of the field. The Ravens did a good job. Brock Purdy, Ted Nguyen of The Athletic spoke to Ravens players, and I forget which one it was, but he made a good point that Brock Purdy's kind of a spot thrower. One of the reasons why he throws with such anticipation is that he's throwing to spots. He's not necessarily throwing to receivers. He is throwing to receivers, obviously, but the reason he can throw with anticipation is because he's throwing to a spot. The Ravens did a good job of figuring out where those spots were and making plays on the ball, and they made the best of their opportunities. And look, the third interception, I thought the second one was just a really good play by the cornerback. And coming in, he was blitzing, and he obviously knew that if he was blitzing, what Brock's going to do is fire that ball to Deebo Samuel to take advantage of the defense blitzing. And he did a really good job of stopping and then jumping and batting the ball in the air. That's just a really good play by the Ravens. The third one, which was Kyle Hamilton's second interception, look, how many times have we seen Brock Purdy roll right and then throw to the middle of the field? And a lot of times this year, it's worked out for him. He's,
Yeah.
Particularly in the red zone, it feels like it happens once a game where Brock Purdy rolls to his right and then throws a ridiculous pass to the middle of the field. And you're like, oh, it's really risky, but it worked that time. Well, it didn't work. It didn't work. and that's why those plays are risky. And then the fourth one, Brock Purdy got hit as he threw it. So like this is why the NFL is what it is. Like, this is why nobody goes undefeated. This is why, like it's such a competitive league. Anybody can beat anybody. And that's not to take anything away from the Ravens, who have been an elite team all year and came in and really put it on the 49ers. But to your point, I don't think it says as the 49ers are bad now. I didn't really learn a whole lot more about Brock Purdy that I didn't already know. Like he's put the ball in harm's way a lot, and he's also gotten away with it at a pretty high clip. And it came back and sort of regressed from, that turnover regression that they talk about. Like that felt like it regressed to the mean in a pretty big way last night. And yeah, like the 49ers turned the ball over. All of the Ravens touchdown drives, they started at Baltimore's 47, the 49ers 44, and the 49ers 9-yard line. So anytime the Ravens scored a touchdown, it came after they had great field position, right? And like, we don't need to go all football guy and talk about how important field position is, but like, to me, the game, and
turnovers.
The game was close at halftime, right? Like the 49ers were down 16-12 at halftime, but it felt like Lamar Jackson converting the 3rd and 16 right before halftime, leading to that field goal.
Yes.
And then the 49ers not doing the lap that they talk about. I think the end of second quarter and start of third quarter sequence is huge for the 49ers. And if that doesn't go their way, they have a hard time winning some of these games. And so you have Lamar Jackson converting that 3rd and 16, turning that into 3 points. 49ers feel like, okay, if they right the ship and get a touchdown at the start of the third quarter, they take the lead and maybe potentially take control of the game, despite Brock Purdy throwing 3 picks in the first half. Well, it turns out they go 3 and out, and Willie Snead has, I don't know what happened, but Willie Snead, it looked like a good throw by Purdy. Snead just didn't turn his head around or didn't get his hands up, or I don't know what it was.
He ducked.
It was third day. Yeah, like he didn't know the pass was going to him, right?
Yeah.
They go 3 and out. It's probably a ball he should have caught to extend that drive. And if the 40 and from then they punt, you have Mitch Wishnowsky committing a dumb late hit penalty on the sideline that gives the Ravens really good field position. They only have to go 44 yards for a touchdown, I think. Yeah. So it was just like, it's just a confluence of like all the football guy stuff, like turnovers, field position. It's to me, it's not more complicated than that.
Yeah, there's penalties. The Niners had 100 yards in penalties, including the one you mentioned on Wishnowsky there. It felt like after that Wishnowsky penalty, the Ravens got the 39-yard completion to Gus Edwards, just a little dump off by Jackson. Yeah. And he takes that down to the 5. They score 2 plays later, and that was when it just kind of felt like the wheels came off, because the Ravens did to the 49ers what the 49ers typically do to teams. And they got up by 2 scores with a really good defense and put the 49ers in a one hand tied behind your back situation where, okay, you can run it if you want, but you're going to have to throw it here if you want to get back into this game. And when offenses become one-dimensional, they get easier to defend. That is like the core philosophy of what the 49ers want to do. And that's a style of game they typically play, and the Ravens did it to them last night. Yeah. It's hard to play football that way. And after they went up 23-12, you get the interception where Purdy got hit as he throws. The Ravens score one play later, and that's the ball game. Because 30-12, a 30-12 second half deficit against any team is tough, but especially against Baltimore, which is right there, is as good as San Francisco. I thought that even going into last night. That's just tough. And so that game got sideways. That's not to say that if the 49ers and Ravens play in the Super Bowl, the Ravens are going to beat them by 2 touchdowns. I don't think that's going to be the case. Because you said something really important at the top that I think needs to be there's the like Purdy analysis in a vacuum, right? It's like, oh wow, look, see, he's actually bad. That's the take from people. Like, okay, that's a separate thing from the 49ers as a whole. And you said it at the top. You'd rather have, you don't love, and somebody, Mr. Barr 1976, I think, in the chat said nothing wrong with the loss, but you shouldn't be getting smoked in December. No, I think that's not incorrect, But also, if Brock Purdy was going to have a game where he is completely flummoxed by a defense and he's being forced to hold on to the ball a split second longer than he wants to, and he's throwing interceptions on balls that are typically there for him, you'd rather have that growing pain now and that learning process now than in the divisional round against the Rams or, against Philly again. Like he's not, he being Brock Purdy has not gotten a lot of those like hard lessons that young quarterbacks typically get. And he got one last night, and it's not, like I said, I'm with you. I don't think any differently about Brock Purdy as a quarterback than I did going into last night. And I don't think that much differently about the 49ers. They got kicked in the teeth in a game by a good team.
But and I agree with you. Like I still think they are probably the best team in the NFC. I still think that on their best day they beat anybody, even the Ravens, who on their best the Ravens. I mean, the Ravens played really well last night. On their best day, I think the Niners still have the highest ceiling in the league, just because of all the different ways that they can beat you offensively. But to me, like the big upshot of last night too is that now the 1 seed is just a little bit more difficult to get. Right. Like we've talked about the importance of the 1 seed all season. And now because they lost that game, they pretty much have no margin for error over the last 2 weeks. They have to beat Washington and they have to beat the Rams. Whereas if they were to win this game against Baltimore, there's a chance in week 18 against the Rams, they can sit their starters. They could get make sure all of their guys are as healthy as possible going into the playoffs with potentially 2 weeks off. And now that Rams game, not to look ahead, that's 1 week at a time, obviously, Kyle.
Yeah, I don't know you're trying to lose Washington.
Not to look ahead beyond Washington, but like that Rams game might be a real pain in the ass. Like Matthew Stafford is really good. And the Rams are playing at a pretty high level right now. And to have to win that game week 18 with Trent Williams now dealing with a groin injury, with, who knows what Eric Armstead's status is going to be. They didn't have Juwan Jennings last night, who was a pretty big loss from an injury perspective, not having him last night. Yeah. Your secondary is a little bit banged up. Diamador Lenore is dealing with ribs. Ambry Thomas has a hamstring injury that caused him to leave the game.
Yep.
So, like, I just, they to me, the most important thing about these last 3 games was beating the Ravens, beating Washington, wrapping up the 1 seed. So you could give your key guys some time off, treat week 18 like a preseason game, and make sure you go into the playoffs with that first round bye and with all your guys as healthy as possible. And now you're going to have to strain to beat the Rams, and you're already dealing with injuries, and injuries have a way of sort of cascading and having this avalanche effect to where like if you do you have guys playing hurt, and do the injuries get worse, right? You have like what happened with the offensive line last night. Trent Williams goes out, and then Jalen Moore goes out, and then you have your third string left tackle who's your right tackle, which means you have a backup right tackle, and then you have a 4-string guard in there, Ben Birch. Like it's just a disaster from an injury standpoint. And so now you have to play these last 2 games. You really have to strain to win them. And the 49ers should win them. They're obviously better than Washington and the Rams, but it's far less ideal than just beating the Ravens, beating Washington, and then having 2 weeks to get yourself ready and healthy for the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, their offensive line to close last night was Colton McKivitz at left tackle. Yikes. Ben Barch at left guard. Jake Brendel, starting center at center. John Feliciano at right guard and Spencer Burford at right tackle, a position he hasn't played since college.
So you had four
and Colton McKivitz at left tackle, who's never played left tackle.
Yeah, you have 4, not this year, but you have 4 backups on your offensive line out of 5 spots.
Yeah,
to end last night's game, and we don't know how long Trent Williams is going to be out. I wouldn't be surprised if this is a multiple week injury for Trent. We'll see. I know he told reporters after the game that he thinks he'll be fine. I don't know obviously he's going to be fine. Like it's a groin injury. You didn't like it's not a severed head, right? Like you're probably going to be okay. Like great, Trent. Thank you. but like your well-being, I'm sure you're going to be fine. It's a tweaked groin, but doesn't mean you can necessarily play football. So yeah, I mean, that's the upshot. Obviously, like, it did feel like after the first pick in particular, Brock Purdy lost a little bit of confidence. Like he lost a little bit of confidence. He was pressing, maybe trying to do too much, particularly on that throw across the middle of the field. That was Kyle Hamilton's second interception. But otherwise, the upshot for me is just like, man, the 1 seed is just that much more of a pain in the ass to get now.
Yeah, man. Not, I mean, like I said, sky's not falling, but that's a game they probably badly wanted to win.
Yeah.
And I mean, they didn't. That's tough.
It was the first time, and we talked about it too, like going back to the Cleveland game and the Minnesota game and the Cincy game, you could talk about injuries and really weird things happening in the Cleveland game and the end of half blitz in Minnesota that led to a touchdown and a 1-score loss, right? Like kind of weird, like sort of, I don't want to say fluky, but like just weird factors that go into losing games. That game last night was like, no, you just got your ass kicked. You just did the things that you could not afford to do.
Yeah.
I didn't think there was anything really fluky about it. The better team won. And that's what happens in the league. And sometimes you get lucky with interceptions. Sometimes you get super unlucky, but ultimately you just cannot give a team like Baltimore those types of opportunities, lucky or not, to have a short field and, allow them to extend drives with penalties. And so this is why, like, field position super important. Like we talk about, we sort of joke about Mitch Wishnowsky and how important he is, but when he's downing kicks inside the 10-yard line, the Niners are a really hard team to beat.
Yep.
But when the opponents with an MVP quarterback is getting the ball at midfield every time because of interceptions or because of penalties or because of short punts or whatever, then that's a problem, and it's hard to win those games. And it's not just on Brock Purdy, it's on everybody. And like the crazy thing was, going back to that end of second quarter sequence and early in the third, the Niners were right in it. It was right there. They weren't. It wasn't insurmountable. And then all of a sudden, the Ravens score 17 points in the third quarter, and then it's like, okay, this is a wrap.
17 points in the third quarter and 2 touchdowns less than 4 minutes in. Like that's
and Brock Purdy left with a shoulder injury that we haven't even talked about yet.
Yeah, his shoulder stinger. So Lisa Salter said on TV that he was cleared to go back in, but I'm guessing Kyle Shanahan was looking at his offensive line and looking at the fact that his quarterback has now exited 2 games in a row because of the shoulder stinger and went, nah.
Well, that's what there was
let Sam Darnold deal with that.
The broadcast caught a long conversation with Brock Purdy and Shanahan, where Shanahan was the one doing all the talking. And, me just trying to evaluate body language and doing a little lip reading. It sounded like Brock went to him and said, I think I'm okay. I think I can play.
Yeah.
And then Shanahan explained, like, no, our offensive line is really banged up. Like, we don't want to put you in this scenario. This game's mostly over. And, we don't want to have you behind 4 backups on the offensive line, including a guy who's like on the practice squad.
Yeah. No, that makes sense to me, man. I think they probably did the right thing. I thought Sam Darnold, for the most part, looked pretty good and showed why the Niners have him as a backup. I want to real quick talk about Lamar Jackson, who was awesome last night. And short fields aside, I thought the Niners defense had a really good game plan for him. And it was the Jalen Hurts one, right? Where it's like, stay in your rushing lanes, try and keep him in the pocket. But Lamar has this ridiculous ability to, and he did this a couple times last night, where the pocket started to kind of collapse on him, and he drops his eyes and like looks around in the pocket, finds a way out, and then gets outside. And he's, such a good athlete that puts defenses in a bind immediately, figuring out if you want to go get him or if you're going to stay in coverage. And Lamar did a really, really nice job of creating explosive plays on plays that I think probably 28 other quarterbacks would have had turn into sacks. And when you have a quarterback that can do that, it's really, really tough to stop an offense, no matter how good your game plan is defensively.
Yeah, I think the plays to me that encapsulated Lamar's night were obviously the 3rd and 16 conversion, where he just scrambled and was given way too much open space. And shouts to you with your prediction that Fred Warner would look bad in the open field.
That didn't take long
via Lamar Jackson. It was that play, and then after the Wishnowsky punt and late hit, to open the third quarter, finding Gus Edwards after sort of rolling out of the pocket. Like what he does, if you're like a defender and you're in space and you see Lamar leave the pocket, that's like one of the worst situations to be in all of football, right? You're like, do I go try to tackle this super elusive quarterback, or do I stay back in coverage and the linebackers bite up because you got to go try to make a play on Lamar Jackson, and then he just flips it to Gus Edwards for what, a
39 yards,
39-yard gain, whatever that was. So like that to me encapsulated just what Lamar Jackson is. Like, he's not the dude who's going to just like make throws at the top of his drop every time, 3-5 step drop, timing, read the field. It's always like, it feels like it's sort of like, peak Russell Wilson, when Russell Wilson was playing at his highest levels, a lot of like backyard football.
Yeah.
Right. And it's not to take anything away from Lamar. It's just extremely hard to defend when so much of what he's doing is unscripted, right? Like, you just have to be able to adjust to him freelancing, and he puts you in such a bind because of how much he can beat you with his legs and how explosive he is and difficult to tackle in the open field. Not to mention he's got a quick release and he can be a pretty accurate thrower. But I'm with you. Like, the first half, Niners were outgaining Baltimore. Like, Baltimore wasn't really doing a whole lot when they weren't just giving the ball off turnovers, right? It felt like the 49ers would have been right where they wanted to be had they not gifted them. Had they not gifted them, but not turn the ball over the way they were and committing
the
all those
49ers.
penalties.
The 49ers in the first half were going at 8.6 yards per play.
Yeah.
That is a wild number.
Yeah. They were able to move the ball.
Yeah.
It was just, it's not like, again, it's not complicated analysis. Don't turn the ball over. Don't give the team great field position every time they get the ball, and you're going to give yourself a much better chance to win the game. And that's just not what happened.
Yeah. I don't, that's like, if you want to turn this into a referendum on Brock Purdy or the 49ers or whatever, like, okay, I'm not there. And I get that that's what's going to happen because the Cowboys got buried after the Niners smoked them, and then the Eagles got buried after the Niners smoked them. Like, that's just kind of what happens on a week to week basis in a league where, you react to one game for 3 days and then move on to the next week. But like I said, the offensive line, like big picture stuff that I think matters from this game is the offensive line injuries. And what do those look like going into next week, and certainly into Week 18 against the Rams, and I think that's mostly it. The question still remains if the 49ers can come back in a game. They're 0-3 when trailing at halftime at all this season, which is not super good, but I don't. I said I wish I was the like sky's falling type of person. It'd probably make for more interesting content. But I mean, they're okay as long as their offensive line is halfway intact.
Not to be super cliche because we're talking about turnovers and field position too, but like, it is a week to week league.
One game at a time. Yes. Oh, that's gonna be a good. That's gonna be a good key next week. One play at a time.
Turnovers, field position, one play at a time. But I just, these things happen, I guess, right? Like, it's part of the league. It's why we love the league. It's like every game is on the razor's edge, and it feels like anybody can beat anybody. And no matter what you think, I mean, it's why Vegas cleans up, right? Like, we have all these ideas of what we think is going to happen, and all the information we have points us to a certain direction, and anything can happen in the league. And the 49ers have been on the positive side of it for most of the season, and particularly in some of their biggest games, like the Eagles game, like the Seahawks games, like the Cowboys game. They've just been on that side of it where they can just blow teams out. And then a few things go wrong, you don't play well, and then all of a sudden you're losing by 18 points to the Ravens in the third quarter of a game. So it's just It's why we love the league. Anything can happen. It's so difficult to win. It's so difficult to beat good teams. Like you have to appreciate. Go ahead.
I've been workshopping this phrase.
Yeah.
You said anything can happen, and I've been workshopping this. I'm not totally refined on if this is what I want to go with, but I'm trying this out. Any given Sunday. Implying that any given Sunday anything can happen. You know, any team can beat any team.
I like that. That's really good.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna roll forward with that one. Put it out into the public lexicon.
Yeah, I mean, so
sorry, I interrupted you to say a dumb thing.
No. You're fine. You're fine. Yeah, I just think like I can't do like the fluky interception thing. Like the Ravens deserve a ton of credit for taking advantage of Brock Purdy's mistakes in ways that other teams, frankly, haven't taken advantage of. Brock Purdy's made that throw to George Kittle 10 times this year. And sometimes it's gotten batted in the air. Sometimes he's caught it. Sometimes it's fallen harmlessly incomplete. And it got picked last night.
Sometimes it got batted in the air and Ronnie Bell caught it against the Giants for a first down.
Right.
It just, exactly. Here's the thing. I think there's a natural like inclination to defend interceptions when you feel the need to defend a quarterback. I think Josh Allen gets that a lot, especially publicly. Like Josh Allen's got people on the internet saying, actually, interceptions are good now. So I think that's the inclination. But for our perspective in talking about the 49ers, like whether the interceptions were quote unquote fluky or not for the quarterback doesn't really matter. I don't. Right. The Ravens had a really good defensive game plan, and their defensive coordinator Michael McDonald has been doing that all year. Like he's a good coordinator, and they are a good fast defense. We talked about it in our preview pod. Kyle Hamilton, the safety, Patrick Queen, and Roquan Smith at linebacker. Like they have really good talent and athletes in the second and third levels, and that's what the Niners have. That's why the Niners defense is so good. So I thought the Ravens did a really good job defensively to force the Niners into spots where they were liable to commit turnovers. If the 49ers and Ravens play again, I don't think the 49ers will turn it over 5 times. I think the game will go differently. But last night, the Ravens did everything right to put their defenders in positions to make those plays. That doesn't mean it's a referendum on Brock Purdy. It doesn't mean it's Ravens are going to beat the 49ers again if they play in the Super Bowl. Like it's not any of that. They played a really good game on Christmas night.
If those teams play 10 times, like they probably go like 5-5 against each other or 6-4 or something, right? Like it's not like the Ravens go 8-2 against the Niners if they were to play 10 times.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's probably about 5-5. They're both really good.
It's what makes the NFL fun is that like it's not a 7-game series, but if it were, it would probably go 6 or 7 at least.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Hey, you know what throw came to mind last night? Because I was kind of sitting there and it's like these things all even out, right? For every near interception that does get thrown, there's one that gets thrown that probably shouldn't have, you know?
Right.
Like for every one the defender drops, there's one that gets batted in the air right to a defender or something like that. The first throw that came to mind was the touchdown pass to Ayuk against the Jags. The rolling left and then throwing it back into the middle to Ayuk behind 2 defenders, and he just happened to sneak it over the 2 guys because the one defender didn't know. It's like that should have been intercepted. Instead it goes for a touchdown. So that was the first throw that came to mind last night when I was trying to go, these things kind of even out over the course of the
feels like he's done it to McCaffrey or Debo, like I think it was a Cowboys game.
Mm-hmm.
He like rolled right and hit Debo in the middle of the field and it set up a touchdown. He's done it to McCaffrey too. Like he's done it a bunch of times, and that's why it's so risky. Like he's done it and it's worked. But it's always been like, man, you're not always going to get away with that. And he didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That's just how it is. So yeah, I mean, he's not the MVP. You just can't have a 4 interception game in that spot and still win MVP, particularly with Lamar Jackson on the other side. But you know what? Like he's a 2nd-year quarterback.
Yep.
I think that's the thing we forget about the most is like we treat Brock Purdy like, is he a top 10 guy? Like he's in these conversations with all these quarterbacks who are on their second contracts and who have been in the league for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. right? Purdy's a second-year guy. It was never going to be smooth sailing the whole way, because if it was, then Brock Purdy would be the best quarterback of all time from a resume perspective. If it was always just came in the league, smooth sailing, never had a bad game, won the Super Bowl in his first full season as a starter, like that's like Tom Brady stuff. That's like what gets you in that conversation. That's Patrick Mahomes type stuff. Right. So like it was never going to be that. It was never going to be smooth sailing the entire time. There were going to be rough patches. And now it's just, can they overcome another rough patch? Can they overcome a loss in a big game? And can they overcome injuries over the final 2 weeks of the season to get the 1 seed? Because as we've seen it, like, you know, the Niners could be better than any other team that they face, but it's still really hard to win in the playoffs on the road. And the only time this team's been to the Super Bowl with Kyle Shanahan as head coach was when they had the 1 seed and they had 2 home playoff games. And they've never lost a home playoff game with Kyle Shanahan.
Yep.
So that's why the 1 seed's so important. It's not to say they couldn't get there, but like you're seeing these injuries pile up and have to play a game in the first round and not have a bye, and then potentially have to go on the road for the NFC Championship game.
Yeah.
It's just a lot more daunting since they expanded the playoffs to 7 teams a conference and took the bye away from the 2 seed. And like, I disagree with it. I thought the playoff format was perfect with 6 teams, and I get why the NFL did it. But it makes the 1 seed way more important now than it used to be, because it used to be teams are like, yeah, we just need a 1 or 2 seed.
Top 2 seed. Yep.
Top 2 seed.
Niners would be in a great spot if it was top 2 seeds right now.
Yeah. I mean, I just think
it's not. So now they have to win their next 2.
For everything I just said, like, I think they need the bye more than they need home field.
Yeah. Yeah. The week off is the bigger key for sure. And especially if Trent Williams is going to be banged up down the stretch here, and they've already been dealing with Spencer Burford in and out, and Brock Purdy's got the shoulder stinger thing that he hurt against Arizona and then had aggravated last night. Not awesome. That's a good point, Bryce.
Yeah, Bryce Herber in the YouTube chat. We're streaming live on YouTube. If you don't subscribe to our YouTube channel, please do that. We're trying to grow the channel, and that would help us out greatly.
Also, smash that thumbs up if you're in here.
Without fact checking this, but it feels right. Bryce says Steve Young, Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Brett Favre all didn't win a Super Bowl till year 8+. Right? Like it's just hard to be a young quarterback and win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
We don't see it happen very often.
But no, sure. That is a conversation though for January or February. Last night didn't change my mind on whether I think Brock Purdy and the 49ers can win the Super Bowl.
No, absolutely. I'm just saying, like, Brock Purdy, because of the way he's played and because of the way he's talked about as an MVP, the standard's been lifted probably to unreasonable levels to where, like, oh, if he has a bad game, all of a sudden the sky is falling.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, a lot of teams would take the 49ers problems, or would take, like, well, our quarterback had 1 bad game and has been playing at an MVP level, 90% of the season otherwise.
It's because the people that think that Brock Purdy is not good had a chance last night to cook on the internet, and it made last night seem way worse than it probably was.
Right.
And there was a real opportunity for the 49ers to score inside of 3 minutes last night and then kick it away with all 3 timeouts with down a touchdown. So
we might have had to podcast last night if Sam Darnold got the 49ers.
It would have been full-blown emergency pod time. No, I said something on the internet last night that got, I don't want to say taken out of context because it got taken in the right context. I'm just bad at tweeting. I was reacting to the drive. I forget when it even was. I think it was late third quarter. And it was all throws like behind the line of scrimmage and backwards. It was all like throws to the boundaries, like extended handoff type of stuff. Because they didn't have Trent Williams. They couldn't run it. So they were trying to get like extended run game stuff going. And so in response to that drive, I said like Shanahan's hiding his quarterback. And this looks like the Jimmy G era. And I was reacting to that, not the whole game. And obviously, if somebody's looking at that anytime other than right then, they're going to think I'm talking about the whole game. Right. And that was my mistake. I was not talking about that. In case anybody's listening to this, I hate listening to this because they think I'm an asshole. That was all. I messed up on that. That's my fault. Flag on me.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Shanahan, what he does, like, we talk about him being able to overcome protection issues a lot. Part of the reason why he's able to overcome protection issues is because he has really good skill players who he can dial up screens to and throws behind the line of scrimmage to.
Yeah.
So, like, that's part of it. Like, when you don't have Trent Williams and when you have 4 backups on your offensive line, that's against a really good defensive front. That might be what you do.
So
can we talk about...
real quick, I want to respond to Mr. Barr 1976 in the chat again. I don't think they were not ready to play last night. I thought they showed up for the most part. They just turned the ball over, and then the wheels came off.
Yeah,
like last night. To me, the Bengals game was a like, oh, these guys did not show up today. Like they just got smoked by a way worse team. Not a way worse team. They were good at that time, but got smoked by a worse team. Last night was just they came ready to play. They were up 5-0. They got a freaking safety, and they drove down the field on the first drive and threw a pick. And they were down 4 points at halftime. Math. They were down 4 points. Like I personally, and if you believe this, that's fine. I personally didn't watch last night and go, oh, these guys weren't ready to go. I didn't get that sense at all.
Yeah, things can avalanche pretty quickly. Can we talk about Jason Verrett?
Yeah, please. It was in my notes to talk about that last.
Kyle Shanahan today in his conference call with reporters was asked again about Jason Verrett, and he said they were kind of experimenting because he alluded to the idea that there were specific routes that specific receivers for the Ravens run out of specific packages, and they liked Jason Verrett in those certain scenarios. And they were only going to give him 4 to 8 snaps. I think he got in for the first time in the second quarter. I'm all the way out on experimenting this late in the season with something like that, particularly when your defense has been good, right? Well, this is not a knock on Jason Verrett. Like, he's been a really good player when he's been healthy. He's always been hurt. And I understand why the 49ers are in love with Jason Verrett and give him chance after chance, because he is like a very high level player when he's healthy. And he's like super professional and hardworking and everything you'd want in a guy from like a culture perspective. I'm just out on the idea of like experimenting this late in the season with something like that in a huge game. Like, this isn't time to experiment. The time to experiment would be like winning these 2 games and then see if Jason Verrett can play week 18 against the Rams and see if you have something there before you get to the playoffs. Like, this is not when you have actual stuff on the line. This is just not the time to experiment. And we've seen at like, and again, it's not a knock on Jason Verrett, but every single time they try something with him, with the exception of 2020, which is the aberration when he played at a Pro Bowl level for like the entire season.
The year nobody else could stay healthy, but Jason Verrett was dialed.
Right. Like, it just hasn't worked. He's gotten hurt.
No, I agree with you in theory, like 100%. In the process is bad here. But Shanahan said that the goal was to get him 4 to 8 plays. When he first said 4 to 8, I thought he said 48. Yeah. And he's like, he ended up getting 5. I was like, wait, what? What the? And then it connected in my brain. He said 4 to 8. So they said to get him 4 to 8 plays. That wasn't the reason they lost. And 4 to 8 plays was not going to be the difference in that game. And I'm guessing if things had gone differently, they would have pulled the plug on that idea.
Yeah, but I'm not saying it's the reason they lost at all. I'm just
but I get the idea on the process. I
don't think it's the time to experiment.
Yeah, I'm
experiment against the Cardinals. Like, don't do it against the Ravens.
Unless Verrett has just been lights out in practice and they thought, hey, there's a chance to improve the secondary right before the playoffs. I get it a little bit, I guess, but no, I'm with you. That's a weird thing to do in week 17, 16.
Yeah. Yeah. I just, and that like, and I'm, this is confirming some priors on my part. So I want to make that clear too, but like the Jimmy Ward thing.
Nobody loves confirmation bias more than you.
The Jimmy Ward thing and the fact that like Kyle Shanahan basically demoted him last year and moving him to nickel and away from free safety. I always felt like Gibson was going to be exposed at some point, and last night, particularly the pass interference sequence and then the face mask sequence on back-to-back snaps, like,
and holding on that snap with the face mask as well. 3 penalties in 2 plays is hard to do.
I think one of them was on Ward, but I've if you've listened to this podcast dating back to the summer and even when the 49ers, I think in the offseason when the 49ers made it clear that Jimmy Ward wasn't coming back, I've just always thought that was a really weird handling of a guy that was like a team captain that had earned a lot of equity in that building. And if he's there and you have issues at nickel, he does provide depth and versatility in a way that Gibson doesn't. And I think he's just a much better player than Tayshaun Gibson. And I know the money is what it is, but the 49ers also were able to clear $40 million in cap space this year. So they definitely could have brought back Jimmy Ward. I just
weird thing, man.
They're just a couple, like, for as good as they've been team building, and this isn't to say I think, John Lynch, Adam Peters, and Kyle Shanahan aren't any good. Obviously, they have the best, if not the best rosters in the NFL. But there are just some decisions on the margins, like experimenting with Jason Verrett in December, just really weird. Not bringing back Jimmy Ward, who to me is a clearly better player than Tayshaun Gibson and a more versatile player, given all the injuries you're dealing with, which is kind of tied into Jason Verrett, right? The fact that he's playing in the slot now where Jimmy Ward used to play. I just think that's something, and again, confirming my priors, revisionist history, all of that being said, like, this is something that I thought was a problem at the time, and it'll be interesting to see here over these last few weeks if it's something that really comes to bite them in a significant way.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely could. Like, J.R. Brown's been fine, but he's also missed a ton of tackles, and Tayshaun Gibson really struggled last night. No, I'm with you for the most part on that. Lori Matthews in our YouTube chat asked why no Sammy Womack, because they only dressed 5 defensive backs and Sammy Womack was the odd man out. So Jason Verrett could get his 5 snaps.
And it's not like Verrett's helping you on special teams. So you're like kind of burning a roster spot.
Yeah.
And then you end up dealing with like offensive line injuries, right? And then you have less depth there potentially because you need to dress Jason Verrett instead of I don't.
The more we talk about this, the weirder it is.
Yeah.
Jason Verrett going to save the season? Yes or no?
I'm leaning
699
And again, this isn't meant to knock Jason Verrett. It's just like you can't be bringing dudes off the street with injury history and been like, yeah, we're going to experiment with this in the biggest game of the season in late December. That's just not something that makes much sense to me.
Yeah, and again, just ensuring if anybody's jumping in the middle of this is not why the Niners lost. It's just a separate.
It's a weird conversation. It's a weird decision-making process.
Strange, very strange. It's like he wouldn't sign to the practice squad unless they guaranteed that he'd be like active or something. I don't know.
Like, I get it. Maybe he can provide you an upgrade, but like, do it against the Cardinals or Washington.
I actually disagree that Kyle Shanahan got outcoached last night. I didn't think there was like any egregious bad play calls. At least not that led to the loss. I just didn't think Brock Purdy was very good.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, that's, again, the difference between last night and the rest of the season. Talk about like Brock Purdy's a system quarterback. Like, the system was the same. It just goes to show that you have to play at a really high level to win games. It's not just like, it's not easy to win games and play at a high level. It's why like the 9.9 yards per attempt would be like the highest number since the merger. Right. Like, you have to play at a really high level to achieve those numbers. Like, you can have a great system, but you still have to play at a really high level, which Brock Purdy was. And that's the difference between leading up to last night and last night. The system's not going to carry a quarterback, which is why the system quarterback thing is super flawed. You can't make that argument and then say, because, like, the system all of a sudden wasn't bad last night. It's the same system he's been running all year. He just played poorly. So it goes to show, like, he was actually playing at a really high level, which proves It's proven itself in big games, with the exception of last night.
Brian Navarro asks, worried about a potential Super Bowl matchup or not? Yeah, no, anomaly to me. I think it would be close, and the Ravens could definitely win if they played in the Super Bowl, but I don't think that they go win by 2 touchdowns again.
I think you get a little bit of an edge knowing that the Ravens came to your building and kicked your ass in December, and then if you were to get them again, I think that would be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And I'm not basing that off like that. That to me is just sort of, I don't know, intangible human nature. Don't really have data to back it up, but just the feeling like,
hell yeah,
if the Niners were to face the Ravens in the Super Bowl, should they even get there?
Right.
I do think losing on your home field gives you a little bit more of an edge rather than, not saying the Ravens would be overconfident, but had the 49ers won by 3 touchdowns, it's almost a little bit more dangerous to play that team that you already beat.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. I it wasn't good. It's not like, yeah, hey, awesome loss for the Niners, but I'm also not going to pull the plug on their season.
Despite what you might have said in the group chat.
Despite what I might have said in the group chat.
During the game. Should we do like, I don't know if we'll ever do this. If we ever did a Patreon, we should like, and people pay to like participate in the Patreon, we should like release screenshots. from the group
No,
chat.
because because I lean into the bit more now.
No, I know. I know.
It's not.
I think anybody willing to pay for it would understand what the bit was. But I think it would be funny.
I'm trying to remember what I even said last night. This is good podcasting as I scroll through our text messages.
Something about somebody stinking, or
I probably said Brock Purdy stinks.
You had a good Steph Curry. You had a good Steph Curry stinks earlier in the day.
Oh, true. Yeah, I unloaded the chop on Steph during the Warriors Nuggets game. Oh yeah. Man.
So.
Got a good. Oh, I forgot.
Not to throw you under the bus. But.
Sacramento Kings PR team slander in here. I'm joking. We didn't do that. No, the Kings. Long story short, the Kings the other night after they got smoked by the Celtics, the Kings sent to the podium a player named Keon Ellis, who's like a 2-way guard who had a really nice game, but the Kings got crushed by the Celtics, and they sent one guy to the podium, and it was their 2-way backup point guard. And so we were joking that the Niners should send like Chris Conley to the podium. Anyways.
Yeah.
All right, I got nothing else.
Yeah,
Niners got their ass kicked. They're
Niners
probably still the best team in the NFC. They should probably still go to the Super Bowl.
It's just going to be harder to get the 1 seed now, like substantially harder, particularly if Trent Williams is hurt.
Yeah,
which would have been the case had they won and Trent Williams got hurt.
Yeah. Yep.
And Aaron Banks.
Yeah, man.
Armstead.
If Colton McKivitz and Spencer Burford are their 2 tackles again at any point this year, I don't like their chances.
They need Trent Williams.
They need Trent Williams pretty bad. Trent Williams MVP, stock up?
Yeah, I would think so.
Me too. All right. I'm going to get out of here.
Yep.
Thanks for hanging out, everybody.
Enjoy your after Christmas shopping.
Yeah, I got a record player, so I'm going to go buy some vinyls.
Attaboy. We love that for
Big
you.
vinyl guy.
Yeah, for sure. We got some in the house here too.
I'm going to play some vinyls and drink some craft beer. I am peaking.
Love that. Sounds like a great Tuesday. I will be getting ready for this Kings road trip. But
party on, buddy.
Party on.
All right, guys.
All right.
Subscribe.
Yep.
You do it. You go ahead. No, you do it.
Hey, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're streaming on here right now. We got a bunch of people in the chat having good conversation. Give us the like button. Give us the notification bell. All of those things help us grow the channel. Obviously, if you're listening on the podcast, subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts. We greatly appreciate it. Cross promotion, cross platform, all of those things. We're also streaming on X, formerly Twitter. So give the Candle Cron account a follow. No stick, no ickles, just Candle Cron. on X, formerly Twitter. Shout out to the No Stick, No Eccles gang. You know who you are. And we will talk to you guys later in the week to preview the 49ers trip to play the Durs in DC on Sunday.
Goodbye, everybody.